pretending to be a little kid.
Really?
Selling NFTs, and then afterwards they're like they called it out after he left, and they're like the people, because people will pretend, I don't know if you guys know this, but they'll pretend to be little kids, and then they'll be like, here is my NFT, please
it looks
buy
like we're live.
Hey everybody,
Let me I'm going to share this link on the Telegram channel, and then we'll get this going. Okay, welcome everybody to the Technical Steering Committee for the Permissionless Software Foundation. It is Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. And I'm joined by these lovely members of the Permissionless Software Foundation. My name is Chris Troutner. I founded the PSF. Let's go around and do a quick round of introductions. Aaron Sundman, why don't you start?
Greetings, everybody. Aaron Sundman. Glad to be a part of the Permissionless Software Foundation. I think one of the core things here is permissionless. A lot of society is set up so that new people, new systems cannot easily get in and break in and cause and make a difference in the world. But with something like this, where you don't have to have permission, and that's what's important about what Chris is putting together with the IPFS and stuff, and making these something that can work for everywhere. So I appreciate this. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Nice. Go ahead, Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a PSF supporter and contributor. That's pretty much it.
Nice. Go ahead, Stoyan.
My name is Stoyan Zhikov, and I help with some of the BCH GS examples repository.
Nice.
So from you.
Go ahead, Aaron Shoemaker.
hey everybody, my name is Aaron Shoemaker. I work on the NFT side and helping to integrate some of the tokens and NFTs in the world of BCH and eCash and stuff like that. A lot of dev research in that.
Nice. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Got some really awesome stuff to share with you guys today. Okay, so this is our agenda. As always, the agenda is on GitHub under the Permissionless Software Foundation group, under a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee. And we file our agendas as issues. So go to the Issues tab. And this is the agenda for 3/29/22 today. So the scope of these meetings are to discuss the core software that the Permissionless Software Foundation maintains. And it's really an opportunity for us to celebrate our technical achievements over the last 2 weeks, which is when we have these meetings. And so the standard format is we'll go through the agenda items and then we'll open it up at the end to a roundtable where we can discuss current events or any sort of new tech that has caught our attention. So let's see. Start with some of the easier stuff first. So the pay to write database Explorer, which is at explorer.fullstack.cache, it now has this app ID filter. So when you go to explorer.fullstack.cache, it's kind of like a block explorer because the pay to write database is kind of like a blockchain. Instead of looking at blocks, you're looking at entries in the database. And so that's what this table is, and it refreshes every 20 seconds automatically. And so you can see a lot of these test transactions for the BCH DEX, but what we've added here is this filter. So if you want to filter by your app ID, so when you submit data, you tag it with an app ID. So this way you can filter out other people's data and you can just focus on the data for your application. So if I go, let's see, those are BCH DEX test. There was a 556 was like an earlier test batch. So I can filter just by those app IDs. So that's a pretty handy little addition for working with the pay to write database. Oh, and as I go, guys, as always, interrupt me if you have questions or comments. Otherwise, I'll just go through all these bullet points. But I love feedback.
I was wondering, what kind of data is allowed on the pay to write database? Is it mostly text data, or, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's primarily geared toward JSON data, but you can submit any data up to 10 kilobytes per entry. So the cost to write to the database is a 0.01 PSF token. So you can do 100 writes per PSF token, and each write can be up to 10 kilobytes.
Cool.
Okay, so the Bch Wallet, or this Bch Wallet Starter, has a new Android APK file. So this is actually one of our pinned repositories. So if you go to the PS GitHub repository,
All right, he froze up. Looks like. Did you freeze up for you guys?
Rugged.
He got rugged.
I'm gonna try and switch. Mayhem. If I drop all the way back. Okay, I'm still with you.
Yep.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, good. All right, that should make it a little more stable. Yeah, so the Bch Wallet Starter is right here. It's one of our pinned repositories. And we have an Android APK file in there now that you can download with your Android phone and load the wallet on. It's right here. You have to click on that and do download. So it's called side loading when you do this. And I just noticed an issue with the camera, so I need to fix that. But basically, what this lets us do, or lets anybody do, is fork this starter and white label their own wallet app, and they immediately have everything they need to compile that into an Android app that they can also white label for their own use. Yeah, so that's the main advantage. We use a framework called Capacitor so this is a Gatsby web app, and you use a framework called Capacitor and Android Studio to compile it into an Android app. And so those dependencies are listed here in the package.json. So yeah, just really want to encourage businesses and other people to do this, like fork it and hack it and build your own app around it. And then the backend infrastructure uses our Web3 community infrastructure. And that is, we'll talk about that backend stuff later. I'm glad Sam and Aaron Sunman, you guys are here, because I want to get your thoughts on that.
Is that so? That's the main difference between the old APK and the new one, is that the new one's using the Web3?
Yeah. Whereas the old one used the full stack.cache infrastructure, and that's why we couldn't really offer it. But basically, with our centralized infrastructure, it really prevented us from offering like a nice big public phone app. But now with this Web3 infrastructure, we can do that.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Wow. So question on that, how difficult would it be for someone to download this, white label it for themselves, then put it on the Google Play Store? I mean, not me right now. I'm just thinking about like a company who wanted to do it. Would it be a large effort? Just, I guess, get an idea of what you'd think that would take for somebody. Yeah,
well, we've tried to make creating the actual Android APK file as easy as possible. So, I mean, that's just a couple clicks. If you have the knowledge and you have Android Studio compiled, that's just a couple clicks. So the bulk of that effort would be in just getting Google Play Store to accept the Android file. And gotcha. I've had nothing but bad experiences with that. That's why I don't even go down that road. People are welcome to do that. I just personally avoid that. They're very picky about anything to do with crypto. And of course, their stance is changing all the time. So this could have completely changed. But my experience over the last 2 years has been, it's very sketchy trying to. And then once you get into the Play Store, anytime you push an update, you have to go through that whole approval process. And what I've seen in the different companies I've worked with over the last few years is that's when they're Like their app might have been in the store for like a year and they're just pushing a minor update and then it'll get delisted because I don't know, something happened that tripped it up and their policy changed and so I just generally avoid the store and that's why I'm like, yeah, just sideload this because another focus of mine is South America. No one in South America has an iPhone. Right. I mean, it's just no one, absolutely no one. And so it's all Android all the time for everybody down there. And they're used to Google, like, especially people in Venezuela and Argentina that really need this software. They're used to Google, like, banning and unbanning their country. So they also tend to avoid the App Store. And they have alternative app stores that they use, and they're generally pretty savvy with sideloading apps like that.
So I want to mention that too, just because I'm going back to the earlier statement I made, permissionless, right? Sideloading allows it to be permissionless, and that's the name of this organization, whereas Google is blocking anything that they don't like, and you never know when it's going to change. So I appreciate your efforts in that, because I feel like that's an important piece of this.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to dwell on that. Yeah.
I would add, like, if you're going to do this stuff and you're starting out as a business, some of your business strategy is probably going to be starting up a Telegram, a Discord, something like that. And you could use that to push them to alternative stuff like F-Droid, APK Mirror, APK Pure, whatever you're choosing to put that APK up on. And so as you build that community, you could use that outreach to push them to alternative app stores other than the Play Store.
Yeah. And that would be a good thing for us to do as a group. It's probably beyond what I have bandwidth for, but if there are alternative app stores where we could list our APK file, that'd be awesome. I'd be totally, I just don't even want to deal with Google. But if there's alternative app stores that we can easily get it into, that'd be worth exploring.
I'm dropping a link with 10 different ones in the Telegram right now for anybody that wants to maybe spearhead that.
Nice.
Excellent.
Okay, moving on. The BCH token sweep library. So if you go to, I should have had it up. If you go to wallet.fullstack.cash, once that comes up, I'll show you. But this is the ability. So we've got a couple paper wallet generators. So this is an example of what a paper wallet looks like. This is for tokens. It's got the simple ledger address. And we also have paper wallet.fullstack.cash, which is both for SLP tokens and regular BCH. But apparently the redirect's not working. So I need to look at that and see what's happening. But this is at slp-paperwallet.fullstack.cash. But it's this feature here on wallet.fullstack.cash. The wallet tab, not that one, the sweep one, where you can scan the private key and retrieve any tokens stored on the paper wallet. So that broke with the deprecation of SLPDB, but it's fixed now. And it's actually there's the visual component, which is the Gatsby plugin that I just showed. But then there's the actual library that controls the logic of the sweeping. And that's what needed to be updated. So I actually used that library in a lot of different places, especially for developers. It's a handy tool. If you're, especially like I use it with this BCH Dex that I'm going to talk about in a minute, where that's using the HD wallet capability to generate UTXOs and store them at different store tokens at different addresses. And so I use this sweep library to like clean up my test environment. It goes through and sweeps all the tokens off of all the addresses back into the root address.
So one of the things, I mentioned right before this, before we came on live, is I planned on using this a lot at the job I had, actually, the ability to sweep PSF or any kind of SLP tokens, because once you start to think about, just like the way, Chris, you've been using the Mint bot inside Telegram, you want to be able to gift people PSF tokens or something, to be able to create a physical item that you can hand something so it becomes this physical thing so you can print them ahead of time. I did a talk even just yesterday at Grand Valley State University, and I wanted to get people engaged, but I had to give them BCH because there was no easy way to sweep an SLP token. So I gave them a couple bucks worth of BCH, which was just sort of fun. I ended up using the gifts.bitcoin.com because that's really the only platform that really supports stuff like that. So this right there, once you think about all the capabilities this has, the sweeping, it's really an amazing piece of technology that, because the gas fees are so low, you can't do this on Ethereum. You can't do this on a lot of things. But because this technology supports that kind of thing, there's a really flexible way of making something amazing.
You can
Yeah,
print like,
go ahead.
like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Smaller, it's like this one. And just give it to the people. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Now I can see it, Stoyan.
Yeah, show them again.
It's like this one. It's very small, like this one. And you just give it to the people. I will not show you the private key because you will get.
Oh yeah, hold on. No, do it again. Do it again.
Yeah.
No. This is the public key, so no problems. But
so did you make those at gifts.bitcoin.com? Is that or
I don't remember it. It was just his. I don't know. I get it from somewhere.
It's fine.
But so for SLP token, the full stack one are the best. Like other guys, they just don't put the SLP address at all. They just put there the BCH address. So it's very difficult to understand which one is my wallet. But the SLP one, it's the best. I have like printed maybe like 10 or more, like something like this. A lot of papers. You don't need even to fold them. Just like have them.
Oh, I've done that. I actually printed hundreds of them with different 1,000 tokens, 10 tokens, 5, and I gave them out. So the capabilities, once you think about how the sweep thing can really work, it's really amazing how you can bring people on. So that is a great example, Stoyan. I wish I had some physical to show.
Oops, wrecked again. Chris.
Oh yeah. Well, Stoyan, thank you for showing those. I mean, that's exactly what's capable. I know Chris,
when I was at
right now. There you go. You're up again.
There we go. I wonder what's.
At least it was a good frame. You were smiling. The current one is not so good. Okay. This one is good.
So when I was at Bitcoin.com, we mostly Gabriel Cardona. We built that gifts.bitcoin.com, and so what it allowed, Roger Ver loved it. Because he'd hand them out, and what it did is that any of them that didn't get claimed, you could recall them back. So if there's a lot of interest in that, we can build that software again. The hard part, and to the point where they did tokens. So we've already got that figured out. But yeah, we could build like a command in the PSF Bch Wallet command line. Allow you to generate paper wallets, like a mass quantity of paper wallets, and then print them, do like 9 per page or something, and then have the ability to recall any that weren't claimed, at some later date. So yeah, if there's interest in that, I mean, I know how to code that up. I don't go to conferences or hand paper wallets out very often, but I'm happy to see people who do.
So I do a lot of talks on it right now, on NFTs, on this whole piece. And so I'm all for finding a way to get people to have some stake in the game, something to care about. So, and a lot of people, I mean, okay, so going back to Roger Ver, he and I have done the same thing. We've given out lots of crypto over time. Now he gave a lot more than I did, so I'm not even in the ballpark of him. But the problem is you'd give out some BTC or something. If you gave it and they don't value it, right? They don't write down the 12 words. They don't know what they're doing. They lose the money, right? So having something like this that only 20% and sometimes only 10% of the people you give it to will actually do anything about it. So you should be able to get that 90% back or the 80% back a month later or whatever. So you don't feel like you're losing, but you also give them a chance to engage their mind if they choose to.
I have a question for how that protocol works do they have to transfer it from the wallet you give them to another wallet to be able to claim it?
Yeah, what'll happen, usually it'll sweep it. So it'll pull it in. I mean, I know I've done a lot of it. It's easier with BCH because there's already BCH, right? There has to be something to fund it. With SLP, it's a little more difficult because there is no, until the post office gets stood up, to support SLP. Sorry, I don't. Chris, you answer it better than I would. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, the post office would be good. But yeah, so the tokens are on the physical piece of paper. And so, yeah, to claim it, that's the process of moving it off the paper and into your own wallet.
Okay.
And that's what the sweeping is.
So
It's
if they're
also-
new, we're going to have to like onboard them into, let's get you a wallet. Let's, let me hold your hand and write down the seed phrases, but I'm not going to look at them. You're going to look at them.
Well, part of it is that exactly. If you have to walk them all the way through it, they don't care enough to keep it.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
that's what I found over. And if you have to do all the work, if they even just do 15 seconds worth of thinking about it on their own, then they're engaged. Otherwise, it's not even worth giving it to them. Really. And I've done it. I've done it hundreds of times, given away thousands of dollars.
Well, I haven't looked recently, but the Bitcoin.com wallet is like constantly losing and gaining this ability to sweep Bitcoin Cash from a paper wallet. And so Roger loves giving out Bitcoin Cash. And so I haven't seen him do it in a while because I think currently the Bitcoin Cash wallet does not support sweeping anymore of just normal Bitcoin. And they never supported sweeping of tokens.
Right.
And so right now, wallet.fullstack.cash is the only wallet that does token sweeping. And so this kind of brings us back around to the
Edge. The Edge is also doing it well.
Who's that?
Edge, I think.
Oh, Edge Wallet, really?
Edge.
Yeah.
Oh.
And do you know if they're doing tokens or just Bitcoin Cash?
Not token, just BCH.
Okay. Well, that's still great.
But it's working. I tried it, but it's a great way. I figured I look on somebody's video and how to see. I figured it's a great way to have a plan B if you lose your wallet or somebody stole it when you travel. If you have one of these things in your pocket, you can like at least pay for your like meal. You go, where's my wallet? Like, so it's good to have one of several of these one inside the pockets when you're going traveling.
Yeah. So as far as the PSF is concerned, if we wanted like a smooth user experience, we'd want to add the token sweeping feature into the Bitcoin, the BCH Wallet Starter, and generate our own APK. And then that would kind of be the incentive of like, here's some free tokens or BCH, and to access it, you need to install, this wallet app. But all the tools are, that's the thing is like, I'm hoping that we'll get businesses interested in doing this to put forth that last mile of effort of actually forking and whitelisting the app. And then now they have their own company tool to deal with their own company tokens. So we'll see. All right, I'll get back to the agenda here. Okay, so that's a sweeping and minimal AVEX wallet and the PSF AVEX wallet. These are both our command line wallets, one for the Avalanche chain, one for the Bitcoin Cash chain. They now recognize and work with NFTs. The BCH one did before, but we needed to deprecate SLPDB and move to the new token indexer. So that was the big thing there. And then the AVEX wallet never did, because NFTs are like this whole different token class that was never originally, so the wallet just wouldn't see them. But Gary has pushed some updates, and so now that works with NFTs. And these are all stepping stones to being able to get NFTs into the DEX and be able to buy and sell NFTs on the DEX. Which that's a good segue to the.
Yeah.
You got something, Aaron?
I was going to say, so now that NFTs are supported, when I get time, I could work on getting them to resolve within the wallet, couldn't I?
Yes. And let's talk about that, because there's a few steps involved before we can do that, but to being able to do that. Yeah. But yeah, I've got some really big, I know it's
Chris, you are wrecked again.
You've been
on my connection. Okay.
You've been in Twitter Spaces too long, Stoyan.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to shut this down. If someone
Shoemaker's got a guest. We should at least.
that would be great. I want to show you guys this. This is. Am I coming through? You guys can hear me? Or am I
Yeah.
totally stuck?
We can
Only
hear you.
voice. The video is frozen, I think.
Okay, there we go. You guys got me now?
Yep. Can see now.
Okay. I had to shut down a couple things. So what I was going to do is just show you a demo of the Raspberry Pi, but that's what's slowing down my computer, so I can't do that. But the Dex is up, and actually, if I go to the Dex README, so if anybody wants to check out the Dex, it's in the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group and the repository called Bch-Dex. If you scroll down, I've got a couple videos linked here. So the first is a high-level overview that it's non-technical. It just explains like the high-level concepts behind the Dex. And then for developers who really want to get down and dirty, I've got this like hour-long video that walks through how to set up the Dex either on a normal computer running Ubuntu or on a Raspberry Pi running Ubuntu. And yesterday, we completed the very first trade between two people on the Dex. Yeah, and I bought a Stroop waffle token. But some dude who I've never talked to before got into the Telegram chat room, and he went through the video, and he had a Raspberry Pi on hand, and he got it running, and he made an SLP token, and I bought it from him, and he bought one of mine. And so yeah, it's pretty cool. And so it's just a big deal that like we've done the actual, I mean, it's up, it's live. Anybody can get on there and put some tokens up for sale. The liquidity is pretty low right now, but it's fully functional, barely functional, but it is functional.
That's huge.
It is huge. And so one of the big takeaways that's in that high level overview video is that that there's three phases to a trade. There's the maker, the taker, and the acceptance. And it's that last phase, that acceptance phase, that is, it's fully automated, but you have to be online in order to like react to it. And so that's why this is a really good application for a Raspberry Pi, is it basically turns it into an appliance, and then you can access it remotely with a web browser to actually, control the software. But the Raspberry Pi is like just sitting there online all the time, ready to finalize a trade when it comes in. And so that's why it's such a really good application for a Raspberry Pi. So so I've got mine just sitting there waiting to accept trades, and presumably his is as well. And for every node that is on the network actively trading tokens, that is a replicant of the pay-to-write database. So the pay-to-write database is being replicated and is becoming more and more censorship resistant. So it's pretty cool to see.
I would like to be, I don't know who the third one was, but I realized Stroop Wallet dude is Hal Finney to your Satoshi. So I want to be the third in there. So I'm going to stand mine up.
Yeah, do it. Do it. And we've got a dedicated Telegram group for this. There's a link again in the README. So if anybody needs help, they run into issues, come on in there and ask questions.
So any Raspberry Pi we can set this up. I can take some time. How long would you say it takes to stand it up?
Well, the walkthrough video is about an hour. It probably takes about 4 hours to stand one up, but a lot of that is just waiting for it to sync. It's not like you don't have to actually be there doing anything, because there's the installation of the Docker containers, and that's sort of like a hit a button and wait like an hour for that to, and then you got to wait for the pay-to-write database to sync, and that can take about an hour. So that's, again, just sort of walk away and let it do its thing.
I'm getting hungry for Stroop wallets or waffles. Sorry, waffles.
I thought the build was frozen, but I guess it just takes a long time for the Docker builds.
Yeah, particularly on a Raspberry Pi. I mean, you can all the software runs on a normal x86 machine, and it's a lot faster.
Okay.
Is it better to use Ubuntu, or are you using like Raspbian
Yeah, I don't think this will run on a Pi 3. I think it has to be a Pi 4.
Okay.
And I haven't tried it with Raspbian. It might work, but it definitely works in Ubuntu.
Okay.
And
Low-
in the
load
video,
up
I
Ubuntu.
point out the other videos on the PSF video page that sort of the intro, like, how to set up Ubuntu on a Raspberry Pi. We've got some videos on that.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Chris, is there some sensitive informations? Like, is it bad idea to have like a DigitalOcean instance running there if you don't have Raspberry Pi, for example?
No, not necessarily. The app has its own wallet and it does manage its own wallet. So it's inherently custodial and like single user. Like that would be a feature down the road, would be to do it in some way where it's non-custodial. But right now the app has its own wallet. So if you spin it up on DigitalOcean, the wallet that you have on, like it's still a secure environment. So I wouldn't hesitate to do that, but I would hesitate to put several $1,000s into a wallet on DigitalOcean.
That's where I was actually, I was trying to spin it up on a VPS on a DigitalOcean. But I thought they timed. I wasn't sure if they timed out or it was just taking a long time.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, if you run into it again, let's talk about it on the Telegram chat room for the DEX, and I'll try and I can try and replicate. I just haven't tried a DigitalOcean environment yet, but I have done it on a desktop here, so it should be the same. Yeah. So anyways, the DEX is running, man. It's clunky. Like there's a UI for taking orders, but there's no UI for making orders. You have to run a script for that. So, I mean, that's how rough it is. But yeah, I can't wait to start getting some like Tether tokens up there and have people be able to, even if it's low liquidity, being able to move in and out of stable coins. And so this is starting to become a segue into, and one of the other upgrades I want to do sooner rather than later is, I can't set up a .com to do the trading because the app's inherently custodial. But what I realized yesterday is I can set up like a read-only version where you can at least just see the coins and the quantities that are for sale. So I think I'll build one of those so that people can at least like go to it and see what is up for sale at the moment. And to sort of encourage you to install your own software.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so the BCH DEX is now officially like ahead of the Avalanche DEX. So that's one of the things I have to go back and backport this functionality into the Avalanche side of things, and then also fork this over to the eCash chain. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Just yesterday, I figured out how to make a multi-sig transaction using the Bitcore library. And actually I hit a snag, and then another person came into the chat room that I've never interacted with, and they figured out the one or two lines of code that was preventing it from working. And I just confirmed today. So that's huge, because in addition to these DEXs, I want to set up bridges across the chain. So I mean, the obvious low-hanging fruit is a bridge between Bitcoin Cash and Avalanche and Bitcoin Cash and eCash. But, we could also do a bridge to like Dash, where we have like a synthetic Dash SLP token. And then we have an app where people can exchange those for real Dash and get Dash delivered to their Dash wallet. So we could use this technique, this bridging technique, to bring in any token from any other chain. And the thing that I don't want to do, I've hesitated on making any moves that way, because, oh yeah, I have YouTube turned off. So if somebody can keep an eye on the chat there, that would help. With my network connection, apparently I can't handle that. but with the bridges, what I didn't want to do is make that move with me being the only key holder of those tokens. And so having multi-sig, having like a minting council that involves many different people prevents a single point of failure. And so that's going to be a big deal. So not only is the PSF token going to be able to be used to pay transaction fees for the DEX, it'll become a medium for value transfer across chains.
So Chris, are we giving up on BCH, GS, multisig? Because before SOP, GS, they have it, and this Bitcoin Core, like they have it from before. But we was trying to make this only with BCH, GS, so using the transaction builder and stuff like this one. So you give up on this project, like using transaction builder and everything?
Well, what I kept seeing references to as I did some research was that the pay to multisig type of transaction that BCH.js creates is like the old school way of doing this that almost nobody does anymore. Electron Cash and this Bitcore library, they use pay to script hash addresses to implement multi-sig, and that seems to be the standard way to do it. I know ideally it would be great to do this BCH.js. What I'm thinking though is that, I mean, for now we have the Bitcore library that we can use, but there's also the possibility of bringing the Bitcore library into the BCH.js library. They're very similar. So, I mean, I'd have to sit down and look at it, but that's kind of what I'm leaning towards right now, is to set up essentially like to pull out the parts of the Bitcore library that are essential for multisig, and just creating a multisig library within BCH.js and pull that code into it. I mean, that's probably definitely easier said than done, but that's kind of how I'm leaning right now.
I think the BCH.js library, it has a little a P2SH. The transaction builder has the add input scripts has a function where it says if you input the P2SH script, but it doesn't accept the data type that it accepts is different from the one that you would use on a normal pay to script hash transaction. So just trying to figure out what kind of data it consumes, like that's kind of like the part where I haven't figured out. But if you look at the transaction builder, there's an add input, which is normal pay to script hash, and then there's add input scripts, and that's where it says if you add an input script, it would be P2SH would be true, but I haven't figured what type of the data type that it's supposed to consume. So yeah, I can see like in this scenario where people like using TypeScript but yeah, just that's the point, because you kind of have to figure out what kind of data structure it wants to consume,
right,
for that part of the transaction.
Yeah, I looked at I'll just turn off my screen sharing so we can do it. That whole this kind of gets back to the history of BCH.js and Bitbox and Bitcore, how they all have a common. I think they all originated from a library called Bitcoin.js, and that was abandoned and then forked into these different projects. And so when Gabriel Cardona created Bitbox, which is where BCH.js came from, that whole pay to script hash thing was like not fully baked at that time. And so it basically got froze and stayed in that state. And that is a big chunk of that Bitcore improved upon in their fork. And the extent of my like meddling in that area with BCH.js was with SLP tokens, because there was chunks of that code that were screwing up the SLP token op return. And so I ended up having to create, I think it's called like encode 2, which is like just used for SLP tokens, because the original encode function like screws them up. And so that's why I'm leaning towards like, okay, well, so Bitcore's clearly like put some more, thought into that whole side of things. So I think the best thing to do is just pull in that code from there. And right now, I think the main value that I'm focused on is multi-sig transactions. But pay to script hash is a huge. It's especially with cache script, like Roscoe Callis, who created that, was part of my work group at Bitcoin.com. I'm still in really good friends with him. And so I think that, so I probably would be good to have a talk with him and see what he advises in terms of the best path forward. Because I don't know if they still use Bitbox for loading the output of a cache script app, or if they use the Bitcore library, or how they actually get it from cache script and into an actual transaction.
I think cache script uses Bitbox and BCH.js from what I've seen.
That makes sense.
Playing with it a little bit, and it incorporates Bitbox and BCH.js.
Yeah. The nice thing about Bitcore is that they have these very high level abstracted function calls. But like you said, they're expecting like their packaged data object, which is very unique to their library. And so like that's what tripped me up is they were like, oh, it needs a private key. Okay, I know what a private key is, but it's like, no, it's not. It's a private key object with like a whole bunch of stuff that's like more than just the private key. And
that was interesting.
Yeah, also they have a different like how to see this coding style. They're like chaining all of the methods, like transaction from dot dot dot. It become one big like line. So it's pretty different from our current like examples like code. It will be a little tricky to make it like part of the examples. Like now you was talking about doing the SOP mint transaction. So well, and so so my thoughts are the same as yours, Stoyan. So that's why I'm thinking I need to look at the code and see what the dependency tree looks like, because that'll determine the decision on this. But that's why I'm thinking like maybe the best bet is just to make a multi-sig library, like a whole library just dedicated to multi-sig that pulls in just their parts of the code just for multi-sig, and so we can kind of almost abstract it away because what was the other thing that you said? You said something else I was going to segue into. But it's different. Just a small wrapper around this different codes and to call it like bch.multisig and just like use it.
And then
people will be look like usual.
You said SLP token. So now that I can generate a multi-sig transaction and spend it, really the only thing after this now is just to add the not return output to make it work with SLP tokens. So that's going to be the next, also probably pulling this library into BCH.js and abstracting it is one task. And then adding making those transactions work with SLP tokens would be another whole step. But I'm pretty familiar with that step. I'm not intimidated by that. But we're close. We have a pretty clear path from here to getting to a minting council that can create, no central point of failure, and can kickstart this vision of using the PSF token as a gaining value as a medium of exchanging value across chains. So the only other thing I wanted to talk about with you guys is rate limits. And I want to share with you some stats from fullstack.cash, because I think the lessons from that is going to, like, what I ultimately want to get to is a discussion about how we want to apply rate limits, or if we want to apply rate limits to our Web3 infrastructure. And Aaron Sunman and Sam, I wanted you guys wanted to get your opinion, because I know you guys are running cash stacks, and so you're in the ditches digging with me. So I want to your input's really valuable here. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. And part of the reason why I don't trust just my judgment here is because I'm a little scarred from my time at Bitcoin.com, because what I'm going to share with you today is exactly what killed my whole team at Bitcoin.com. So, oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, that's not what I wanted either. I want these ones. So this is metrics.fullstack.cache. So this is what a BVT that I designed called for build, verify, test system. And so every like 2 hours it runs, it checks all the infrastructure to make sure that it's alive and responsive. And then at the end, it does a log analysis. It downloads like 100 megabytes of logs and then analyzes them. So our servers are currently getting just shy of 3.5 million requests a day.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a significant growth. And in fact, it's such a big growth rate that I was like, these can't be right. These can't be right. But they are kind of right. And as I dug into the data, so about, let me look at my notes. I kind of summarized everything here. So about 92% of the responses are 304, HTTP 304, which means like they're requesting the same data over and over and over again. And so 304 means, hey, the data I just gave you a few seconds ago, the data hasn't changed, so just use that. And so the 304 prevents data from going over the wire. What it doesn't do, however, is prevent the cache stack from computing that data. So it doesn't save us in anything in terms of computational load. It just prevents the data from going back out over the internet. And so the number one response is this Electrum X balance. So they're just checking the balance of a Bitcoin cache address. And that makes up 96% of the calls are just this one endpoint. And they're just doing it. So at fullstack.cache, so let me talk a little bit about the history here. So at bitcoin.com, we experienced the same thing, these like just ginormous exponential rate and growth. And we couldn't get ahead of the curve. No matter how much computing resources we threw at this thing, people just consumed more and more of it, because a lot of it, you can kind of tease this out from the data. So like 93% of the calls are just to one endpoint. And if I look at the IP addresses, I should blow this up so you guys can see this better. So this is like, this list here, this IP address is making the most calls of every IP address. And let's see, I think it's repeated here, 196. So in this little chunk, which is like an hour and a half worth of logs, it got 1,420 calls to go through, but the majority, 4,000 of them, were returned as 422. That's the false. But like it basically hit our rate limit. So what a lot of the major consumers are doing is they're just running their software as fast as they can, and they don't care that they're hitting rate limits. They're just taking what they can whenever they can. So there's just like ping, 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 422, no big deal. And then if it goes through, then they update whatever their software is. And so they're just slamming the system as hard as they can. And so this is basically like really bad coding, but we can't force people to be good coders. All we can do is set rate limits.
Was this malicious?
I don't think so.
When it happened to Bitcoin.com, was it perceived as malicious at that point?
When it came to Bitcoin.com, I think this is the root of the problem that we were running into. But the big problem at Bitcoin.com was that the people like me in the trenches and middle management and top level management couldn't align on what the root cause was and what a solution was. And so we just died from paralysis.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so that's what I'm kind of, but we have a horizontal org structure here. So we're all engineers, and we can just have a conversation about the data.
It's not malicious, it's just courtesy. like Chris mentioned, it's getting the balance. So it's just a website pulling all the time the data every several like seconds or something. So to keep it on the screen like real time alike. So it's not on purpose. How to say? Not to make evil. It's just how to say, yeah.
Well, unless that's your IP address, I don't think you know for sure that. But
mine.
Yeah, no, but
no, because I mean,
sorry about that.
On the free tier, this is a free tier API. These calls are from free tier. Can you tell?
They're calling api.fullstack.cache or
Okay.
bchn.fullstack.cache. So yeah, just to put this a little bit in perspective. So of the 195,000 requests that are processed in these logs, which again is just like an hour and a half, 33 of them originated from fullstack.cache. So like they're coming from like wallet.fullstack.cache. 125 use jot tokens, and so like the vast majority are not using a jot token, and they're not originating from a fullstack.cache origin or one of the other whitelist like PS Foundation or something like that .cache. So yeah, they're just people who are trying to get the free resources and are trying to use that 20 requests per minute free tier that we offer. And so the reason why I bring this up with you guys is because you as operators of the cache stack, you're going to see this exact same traffic profile. And as a community, I want to incentivize people to run cache stacks, which means the incentives to run a cache stack has to be greater than the cost of this behavior. And so I don't, so coming back around to how this concerns fullstack.cache, like these numbers are interesting because like fullstack.cache is supposed to make money. And we can see here that far less than 1% of the amount of traffic is generating money. The vast majority is freeloaders. This is the classic freeloader problem. And so a couple techniques that I've done, and in fact, now that I've looked at the data, there's actually a pretty simple solution to this. And it's maybe not even a problem. Well, let me just talk to that directly, and then I'll talk about sort of different solutions that we might be able to erect that I've come up with, and I want to get your feedback on. In this particular specific example, this is an engineering problem, so I think the proper approach is to look at the data and come up with an engineering solution. Because 93% of the hits are just going to this, I'm thinking I could just do a cache, like a 5-second cache, where if you hit this one specific endpoint and the data is in the cache and it's less than 5 seconds old, then it just returns the data from the cache. And so the data doesn't actually go down to any lower level beyond BCH API. It doesn't actually hit the indexer and extract a computational cost. I think that would be the proper engineering solution, but that would be a very surgical, if this data shape changes, that solution no longer works. Like if people started hitting, the price endpoint or SLP indexer instead, like just a different endpoint, I could apply that cache technique to, other endpoints. But anyways, I think that's the surgical response to this specific data shape.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Is there like a big market or like as far as BCH like endpoints to get this kind of data is like fullstack.cache like one of the primary providers of? I know there's a lot of options, but I'm not familiar with that whole like.
There's a handful of people of companies that provide the same resources that fullstack.cache is, like maybe 2. I think Blockchair has an API one, and
I use theirs sometimes.
yeah, and but Bitcoin.com referred a lot of the traffic to us. They used to be the go-to place for this information, but they've shut down their servers because of this exact same problem. And they told everybody to go to fullstack.cash. And so that's where a lot of this traffic's coming from. And it's, I mean, like I said, like this traffic ramped up over a fairly short period of time. And so it's clear to see like the reason. It's not that we are taking on like huge numbers of new users. It's that we have a handful of users that are just maximizing, like just slamming this thing, almost like a DOS attack, but not. And then the other thing, I dug a little deeper into Fulcrum, and even despite, so this endpoint is actually going, so the Fulcrum indexer is actually servicing like all of these hits. They are actually making it all the way to the indexer. And I have 2 of them and they're load balanced. I didn't put any numbers down, but I did like glances so I could see the computational load, and they're fine. They're not really using an excessive amount of memory or CPU power, because they're really just, it's level DB. So they're just doing a lookup table real quick. So the system's actually doing fine under this kind of a load. So that's another like really good piece of information, that like these 3 million requests a day or 3.5 million requests a day are not really making the system sweat very hard. So that's really good. And we can also expect that same behavior with the cache stack because it's all the same software. So those are a few little caveats, but dealing with this bigger problem of these rate limits and just knowing that like this is just a matter of scale. Like it doesn't matter if the number's 3.5 million or 35 million, like it's going to get to 35 million because we're just basically dealing with human nature here. And so what I've done at fullstack.cash is I've instituted this 20 RPM rate limit where like that's what you get for free. And if you want more, then you have to pay. And I'm kind of leaning towards maybe we should implement that with the IPFS Web3 infrastructure, make that the same. And by pay, so in the case of fullstack.cash, we have a centralized auth server, but we can't do that here. But what we can do, so with fullstack.cash, we have a centralized auth server. You pay for a JOT token, and then when you make a request, you present that JOT token. We can do a similar thing where instead of a JOT token in the header where they would normally pass the JOT token, they pass a proof of burn, just like they do for the pay to write database. And so we could do something like if you burn, 0.1 PSF tokens, that buys you like 24-hour access to any cache stack on the network. And so whatever computer on the network cache stack you're using, you pass in this transaction ID in the header, and then the cache stack side of things would have its own cache where it tracks, if it sees a transaction ID, it validates it to make sure that it's an actual proof of burn, and then it caches it so it doesn't have to do that validation process every time. But like that's basically like, okay, this is the first time I've seen this. The transaction happened at this time, so 24 hours from there it expires. And so we can get the same exact essentially business model or user experience of a JOT token in a more decentralized way without having a centralized auth. So we could implement this, but that's also adding friction. And one of the things I'm trying to balance here is that like we want to make onboarding as easy and low friction as possible. Like we want people to use it, but at the same time we have to think about abusive use cases like what we're seeing, and find the right balance. So ideally I'd like to keep everything free. And the other thing that's in our favor for the Web3 infrastructure is that IPFS introduces its own latency, which can be fairly significant. So that's going to slow things down naturally. And then also we have redundant servers. People aren't just going to fullstack.cash. They're picking one of the cache stacks on the network and using that one. And so the traffic will naturally also get divided up by the number of cache stacks. So those are other considerations. But, so now that I've kind of explained it, what are your guys' thoughts in terms of like incentives? Like I'm trying to put myself into your shoes where you're at home, you've got some internet connection. Hopefully it's fiber, but maybe it's not. And so all this traffic is probably a real concern to you. And I want you to run your own cache stack, and I want you to incentivize you to share that resource with the community. How can we balance these trade-offs so that you're incentivized to share your resources?
Well, I'll say right now, as far as I've been monitoring my the stack, I really, since it's only over IPFS, I haven't really seen like any traffic on this machine. So maybe if it was open, I mean, it's not something I spent a lot of time, dealing with. So
yeah,
I haven't had the experience to, or just haven't thought about it too much. And I don't know how, like I'm on a residential, like I'm on a router, so I don't know what the implications would be if I set, right now I'm only using it for personal use, but I know it's on IPFS too. So maybe the IPFS latency would prevent any sort of like major traffic.
Yeah, I
would have to give this like maybe more thought.
Yeah, and that's like, I'm not looking for hard answers right now. Like that's the whole point, is just for us to start thinking about this, because
Well, I agree with what you're thinking about in terms of, first of all, just putting the cache in place, right? And I also agree with Stoy, and I don't think any of this is malicious. But at what point does it appear to be, and how do we know, and what do we do about it? And I think that's probably the next question, because I agree. I don't care what it costs me to run it. I really want this to be easy to run. I want anybody to be able to develop and not feel like, oh man, I got to put down hundreds of dollars, because I think a lot of the people that really want to do this stuff aren't in the first world, and they don't have the ability to just plunk $100 or $500 down on a server or anything else, or even buy a JOT token, right? So, so I agree with you, and I'm willing to. I mean, I do wish I had a fiber connection here, but like to Sam's point, with IPFS delay anyway, it's probably not all that, except when I sound like a chipmunk when I first sign into some of these meetings. Everything's been fine here.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, what I'm hearing is let's wait and see how it evolves, and that's probably the prudent attitude.
Can this be the Android applications? Because I think several wallets already using full cache, like maybe Zapit and Bitcoin. So even if you change the way that they, in fact, in the moment have no way at all to use some of the these tokens. They just maybe have one input for the URL, and they put their full stack.cache, and that's all. That's why all requests coming without any tokens. So even if you change it to pay to the other model with have a header, they will not change it again, because maybe there's no way in the application to do this.
Yeah. So couple things there you said that I want to comment on. First, this discussion of maliciousness. It's sort of like the discussion between censorship and scaling. At some point, those two things are impossible. Like if you get a 404 error, does it mean that somebody's trying to censor your data, or that the server fell over because it can't scale? It's sort of the same thing. It's like I can say with a high degree of confidence that this traffic is not, I wouldn't call it malicious, but like it's basically starting to fade into that point where you could call it malicious, and there's really no bright line between the two.
Certainly not optimized.
Yeah. And then to get back to what you said, Stoyan, about phone apps possibly generating this traffic, that's quite possible. The model that I've been trying to get other businesses to adopt is the model that Suite uses. Suite.io, fullstack.cache runs their infrastructure, and they have a phone app. And so what they do is they have essentially a gateway. So people hit the Suite.io servers, and then on the back end, their servers talk to our infrastructure. And so and they run isolated infrastructure. So they don't use the same, so the model for fullstack.cash is the jot tokens basically for single developers and small to medium businesses that have basically internal stuff. And then once they get to a certain size, they need to run their own isolated infrastructure, and they can do that themselves, or they can contract with fullstack.cash. That model doesn't really apply to the Web3 infrastructure that we're running, because we do want these phone apps, and we in the phone app, that sort of the path that I've chosen to go, we'll see if this was a good decision or not, is you go into the config section and you pick what backend server you want to talk to. And so if it's not working, you just pick a different server. And so we're able to split that load up among the community. And another thing that we haven't talked about yet is that, right now we're just kind of running these cache stacks because it's all new and we're excited about it. And but the plan is to have these bounties pay out every month, and the amount that they pay out should more than compensate for the cost of running this infrastructure in the cloud, like, properly. And I still want to go down that path. So that will also help mitigate this stuff. Like, hopefully as the traffic ramps up, our token value and our ability to pay bounties to run reliable infrastructure also increases. And I think as we continue to focus on bridges and the DEX, that will be the case.
Wasn't the free tier, like, traffic all supposed to, as far as some of the new wallets, like all the APIs go directly to the Web3 stack, if I'm free-bch.fullstack.cash. So I've got that running on I have the ability to point it to different Web3 server cache stacks, but I have it primarily pointed to a computer that's in Portland on a fiber connection that, like, nobody uses. So it's fine if we overload it. And it's also fine if it falls over, because that just incentivizes people to move to a different server. Another option that we could do is I can show a diagram of our Web3 cache stack if it helps, but basically, IPFS is this bus, and that BCH consumer, IPFS consumer one that runs the local backend, we could have that load balance. Right now, you just tell it what cache stack you want to point it to, but that could actually load balance and bounce around to whatever server seems to be the best at the moment. So that's another possibility that we could do. Load balancing is kind of tricky though, where you can have like every other, like if you do round robin load balancing, you can have like every other call fail, and that really screws with apps. So that's not a silver bullet either. Okay.
Oh, so Bitcoin payment module called out my PSF dog.
Yeah. I love that your green screen, he keeps fading in and out.
Yeah, he keeps fading. I have to say, so thanks for the comments on YouTube. Chris, I'm one of the things I would say is I've never been through this. Like, you've been through this before. You see what the engineering options are. So I certainly trust your judgment better than my own. And I also feel like this is one of the things that the reasons we joined this is because we want to help support this as well. So I appreciate you bringing it, but I'd have to say that I would certainly trust your judgment more than my own, given my lack of track record on this. Sure.
Yeah. And if it was as simple as like just making the right decision, I would do that. But this is all trade. It's a multivariate trade-off. It's like, it's not just like either or. It's like, well, if we move this, then these other three things, have to adjust as well. Right. And if all of a sudden it started working a whole bunch better, then they would just turn up the number. I mean, it would just, so all of a sudden, if it was, it's hard to say, but it feels like encouraging the wrong thing by making it easier for them to do it. So I don't know. Yeah. Well, so I'm glad we've had this discussion. Let's continue to have the discussion and be aware, and I'll share, findings with you guys. But yeah, it's just, I know from experience that if we don't have a plan to deal with this, like, it will bite us in the ass, guaranteed. And so, hopefully we're a long ways off from that point, but yeah, just food for thought. We'll continue to have discussions about this. All right. Well, so it's been a little bit about an hour, but I'm open. I'm happy to open the table up to anything else that you guys want to discuss.
You guys want to see a nerf?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's see your nerf.
You gotta enable sharing.
There you go.
The horse guy, or no?
No, this one's gonna be a lighthouse. So
okay.
Well, and Crazy Money says we need to start using Starlink to back our IPFS. That way they can exist anywhere, these servers.
I've been on the waiting list for 2 years.
All right, so this is the Anaconda prompt, and I'm just gonna show you this from Go. So here. So you are watching it resolve in real time right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So this is the point cloud.
This is not a point cloud. It actually uses quaternions. So it's a little bit different than a point cloud. So it's got 4 dimensions instead of 3. So like it's resolving and we can start moving it around. And this was actually a data set I had a really hard time reproducing with photogrammetry, and it did it with this. And like as this is resolving, you can even see that there's a bird up on the lighthouse right there. And never would have caught that before. I do have to figure out certain things, like when you pan down here, it's not as resolved because there's no pictures from down there because they're mostly from up here in the drone. But I'll zoom out and show you the actual cube. So this is the actual cube of the nerf. And so there's just a lot of experimentation I got to do to see what works. But what is kind of cool is as it resolves, it's almost like you're on the misty beach here, you know?
Right. Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of like mist. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a matter of like figuring out what photos to put in, how to put them in, what size they need to be, what perspective they need to be. And video talks about being able to do this with like 4 photos or something like that. But you can see as I let this run, the model's going even faster. And then let's see here. Where was that? That's the depth of field. Okay. So this whole program has some really cool stuff that you can do. Like we can take a look at, this is just a shader, and let's see, we can take a look at our normals, and normals are where the light thinks it should be hitting. They go perpendicular to the XYZ plane on whatever voxel is being rendered. And we can take a look at our positions here. So there's really a lot of and some of that's just cool. I think it'd be really neat to just be like, all right, there's the video, of this lighthouse. But yeah, this is a series of like only 200 some photos from a drone, which is just incredible that it's able to produce this type of resolution, and it's only getting better. I have to experiment with how many photos I can hit it with. And then from here, I think you can export meshes and stuff like that. I haven't done that yet, but the idea is, let me go back up to the shade. The idea is that, as we're able to export this stuff, and my hope is to, I'll stop sharing here. My hope is to be able to utilize BCH, eCash, AVAX NFTs, and take what I've learned from Ethereum with resolving metadata, and hopefully be able to resolve nerfs, have the nerf information there, and then have you be able to pull that in to a program, say on your computer, and stream that from IPFS, that sort of thing. So that maybe the NFT itself is that transform.json object. And actually, let me pull up a VS Code and I can share one more time and I can show you guys what the transform.json looks like. So this is the transform.json file. And we'll start at the top here. It gives you the different camera angles, and you can change the scale factor. It's kind of a resolution factor. 16 is kind of standard, especially for a scene like this. If you're smaller objects, you can go, you can actually go smaller. But you can see what you get is a transform matrix of these X, Y, and Z points, and then these are references within the cube for where the GPU should put those. So, and then it's got a little sharpness thing, but you have to run. I won't bore you with running the file itself, but once you get done, you get each one of these is an image, and this is the data set from the image, so that when I run the program, it's pulling in everything from this data set. So
very cool.
But hopefully, you know, as I get time, I want to figure out how to take the Bch Wallet Starter and maybe add some 3JS in it where we can resolve 3D metadata. And I got to figure out how OpenSea is using what they call animation URL animation URL. And Stoy and I have talked about it. It's not a standard on Ethereum, but I think we could use a similar thing for BCH, AVAX, and eCash, where they can read the metadata that's attached to the NFT and then go resolve that from IPFS. And then what we need on the client side is something like Babylon.js or 3JS that can resolve some of these assets and these objects. And when we can get to that position, I think we're going to see a huge market open up for game devs because it is so cheap to produce NFTs on BCH. It's ridiculously cheap. I mean, people are harping on Loopring costing like 70 cents to produce an NFT, and GameStop's setting up their entire environment on top of it when it cost me 1/10 of a cent to produce an NFT on BCH. And you could, as a game dev, producing 10,000 objects to go in your game, what's better, 1/10 of a cent or 70 cents each?
Yeah.
You know, and then the next step after that is to look into porting the BCH wallet that resolves the metadata into Unity, which has already been done with MetaMask. So you can call in an NFT object from IPFS into Unity. And I think I showed calling it from Unity or IPFS one time, but the idea is that within probably a year or two, we're going to be at a point where game devs can buy NFT assets like this, and then they can load them into their development environment and not even have to necessarily download them to their machine. And I think that's where these games are headed, but especially with this Nerf technology, which can revolutionize the way we visualize and capture 3D. And some of the stuff that's coming with LiDAR, where they are actually implementing the measurement of the photons as they're reflecting to understand color data with LiDAR, which will be insane and revolutionary.
Nice. Well, Aaron, let me sort of show, while you're talking, I was able to pull a few things up. So let me show kind of where the DEX and the ability to attach data to tokens, how that's kind of shaping up. So what was slowing down my computer before is I was doing a remote desktop connection to the Raspberry Pi, because I wanted to show you what the DEX actually looked like. And so I just managed to take a screenshot. So this is what it actually looks like. It looks a lot like wallet.fullstack.cash, but there's this order list. And so you've got the ticker, and then you've got the token ID, which is a link. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute. And then a link to the actual data on the pay to write database. You've got, so like one Trout token at 5,000 Satoshis each, is a total of 5,000 Satoshis, or about 2 cents. And so here's that Stroop waffle. So he's got 500, or let's see, 10 tokens at 500 sats each. So that's 5,000 sats for a total of 2 cents. So that's kind of how it's shaping up. And right now, so what I want is this token ID. When you click on that, it'll take you to this page at token.fullstack.cash. And this gets back to the mutable data library that is being sponsored by launchpadip.com. And so this is an example of a token in my wallet at wallet.fullstack.cash with a token icon. So this is an example of mutable data. And so if I put the information for this token into token.fullstack.cash, its token ID, what it does is it loads the token icon, and then it tries to load the immutable data and the mutable data. Now this token doesn't have any immutable data, but that would be, you know, information that's not going to change. So like the author and the context and anything that like at the time of creation you want to record that's never ever going to change, that would go in the mutable data. So that would be actually like that. So that would be the pointer to say like the 3D model or whatever, if it's an item, say in the metaverse they want to bring in. And then there's this mutable data section here that controls the token icon and any other information that we want to add. But so this is the workflow: is you'd create an NFT, and when you load it, when you create it, you would attach, you know, the 3D information or whatever you want, and that could go in either the mutable or the immutable data. So you as the designer and developer can make that decision. But then you could put that NFT, you could give it a token icon so it looks nice when somebody puts it in their wallet. And then you could put it up on the DEX, and people can click on it and pull up this page and information about the token before they buy it. And then they buy it and it moves into their wallet, and they're able to and then when that happens, the mutable data is still under your control as the creator. And so you can use that to have a relationship with the person who owns the token. So if you need to pass them encrypted data, actually you don't even need communication from them. If this was something like a consumable, like where you wanted to make sure that they had the encrypted copy of it, you could then use that token as a homing beacon to send them directly encrypted data that's encrypted to their private key for the address that's currently holding the token. And then if the token exchanges or moves hands, you can always use that homing beacon feature. But then you can also use this mutable data as like a certificate of authenticity that like, okay, like, yeah, you might have bought this token, but I, as the token creator, have not gotten my commission. And so I do not recognize you as the current, like, as far as I'm aware, the token is just in flux right now. I don't know who owns it. The last documented owner, you know, is this, and I have control over that data. So a lot of different ways that this can be sliced and diced.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that way of using the mutable data. That's great, because now you can do this encrypted communication stuff. There's a lot there. Okay, I have to rethink a lot of that. Great point.
Well, it does allow you to do stuff like so like 3D assets are rather large. So my solution for it is to put the smaller asset on there so that it can show up in a marketplace for sale, and it resolves quick enough so that people aren't going to click off it. But when you buy it, then you can airdrop the larger data or a link to the larger data file. Because if I'm a 3D guy, I don't want a 50 megabyte GLB. I want the 700 megabyte GLB, because I want full resolution to take into Blender or 3ds Max and mess with it. So that's a great solution as well. I do have a question on the JSON. So with the JSON, are you pointing to an IPFS immutable spot and then pointing to a transaction ID for the mutable data? Is that how it is?
Yeah, both the mutable and immutable data is pointing to an IPFS, some data on IPFS. So
okay.
Yeah, and so they're different, but the one goes into the document hash, or the document URL, and that's the immutable data.
Yeah.
So that's some JSON on IPFS, and that won't ever change.
Yep.
And then the document hash field of the token is used to point to an address that then points to a JSON document on IPFS, and whoever has control of that address can change that pointer and can change the data.
See, I do like that, and that's where you know, as you've been building this DEX and you've been building these capabilities, having proper resolution and a marketplace within BCH, you know, is going to, I think, lead a lot of NFT creators that there's, you know, Story and I have been kind of diving into the NFT world, and there are like two sides of the coin. There's a lot of get rich quick people that like, they just want to sell NFTs and get money. And then there's guys like us that are like, we see a lot of utility in this for future business, and we want to see that utility developed, and being able to move to cheaper chains, once the bridges are stood up, being able to transfer those NFTs between those chains to allow the end user to not be siloed with their NFT, is I see this as like, this is going to break open the market in a new way that people haven't even wrapped their heads around.
Yeah, well, actually, so the bridges that we've built, they're more for fungible tokens, and so there's a lot of trade-offs there, and so doing a bridge for an NFT, well, if you do it on, this is where I think Avalanche could really shine, because they have all that natively built in. So if you do an NFT on Avalanche, then I think you can move that NFT over to the Ethereum chain and back again. I don't know for sure. I've never tried that. But in NFT, the way the fungible so who was I talking to? I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was given like a, for instance, with like Dash Core Group, you know, they have their own DAO and they fund Dash development. And I know a few people over there. And so once we get this tech stood up, I'm going to go to the Dash Core Group and I'm going to say, hey, create an SLP token that's Dash, and then you manage that token. But as long as you are the central authority issuing that token, anyone else can set up a bridge. They can exchange tokens on the DEX, and they can set up a bridge between Dash and Bitcoin Cash and honor that token. You don't actually have to be in charge of that. All the Dash Core Group needs to do is manage the supply of SLP tokens. Yeah. And because there's one central authority that's like, this is the official Dash token, anybody else can set up a bridge, the actual operation of the bridge. So the bridges themselves become decentralized, rather than having like a bunch of people trying to honor their own variation of the Dash token. And then that gets really confusing really fast. Yeah. So that's like the caveat is with these bridges is, and if you think about it, it works because the vast majority of tokens are centrally issued anyways. There's just not a lot of decentralized tokens. And so if a central organization like the PSF, I mean, we're going to do the same thing. This is why the minting council is so important, is if we have a minting council that is in charge of the inventory of PSF tokens on all the different chains, and they issue the official token, well, then everybody else can set up bridges and use the tokens on all these other chains. But it all comes back to like, there's one token, and that token is somebody's in charge of that token. Yeah. And so it works really good for fungible tokens. NFTs are like a whole, different type of engineering problem. You can do things like wrapping, like someone could be like that could just be a service that someone sets up, like, yeah, send me your NFT and we'll hold it in custody, like maybe with a multi-signature wallet, or something, but basically, and then we'll create a synthetic token on this other chain that represents your NFT on the BCH chain or whatever chain.
Mean, that makes a lot of sense, because like DeFi Kingdom, for instance, they built a game on Harmony, and they're going to launch their expansion on Avalanche, right? So what are those people with Harmony? How do they get their assets over to Avalanche? Well, doing exactly that sounds great. Wrap it, send it, wrap it, and essentially mint it on Avalanche for you to use in the game there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're getting the utility that you need. It's just jumping through technical hoops to make it all work.
I wanted to ask Chris, do you have more information of this LNS that Hayden is talking? Because with DEXs and stuff like this, having an address will be pretty convenient. So do you have something more on the topic?
I don't. I've sort of deliberately not been paying attention to it because I can't separate the hype from fact right now. It would require a lot of effort to sift through all that. And I mean, I like what they're doing. I don't know if I trust it, but I like it. And the whole the whole name resolution thing is a little wonky because ultimately it comes down to the web browser. And so some web browsers have been really progressive. I think Safari, is it Safari and Brave that, they've been working pretty good with unstoppable domains. And that's sort of caught on with the Ethereum naming service, but I don't think the support for the ETH system is as good as unstoppable domains. And then BCH is modeled after the ETH system. So it's like, you can't, so I could be totally wrong about what I'm about to say, but I think that in order to share one of those .bch domains is like the user has to install a browser extension. And so you can't just like share the link. It won't just naturally resolve if someone clicks on it. But again, I could be wrong about that.
But this Hotzi, I'm not sure about the URL addresses, but these addresses, they're mostly for the wallet address, the Ethereum one. Because Hotzi, it's pretty simple system. They just mint one NFT, send it to this wallet, and anytime you want to see some like name to wallet address, it's just the NFT one.
Yeah.
So NFT will hold some metadata, and like you're talking, if you want to have a website resolution, it's maybe a different problem. Maybe you need some extension to do this whole getting NFT, something. But my point was that all of this ENS or this BCH, it's on smart BCH, right? But they was talking about the resolving this in EC, in Electron Cash Wallet. This was how they will do this. Because for smart BCH, it's a simple problem. It's how to see. It's done already on, but for EC, how to see, for Electron Cash, this means they will have something on BCH side.
Yeah, I know, and that's the other reason why I'm super skeptical, because it's like, okay, they have pay codes, which is another new feature they added Electron Cash, and they're great, but it only like the feature is so complex that no other wallet has implemented it, and no other wallet is likely to implement it. So like pay codes and Cash Fusion, and now this name service, like they're all so complex that only the geeks who, like the handful of geeks who do Electron Cash are like actually can use it, because it's like the feature is not supported anywhere else. And so like I just don't know. I don't know how to feel about it, honestly. It's just
I know there's ways to resolve the ENS address, but Soyan's right. A lot of times it's used for sending somebody cash, like an easy, like I went and got an ETH address, aaronshoemaker.eth. And I want to do a BCH address as well, just to do it. But as far as resolving it to a website, you really have to Web 2, you would have to like do something with the CNAME, to resolve that sort of thing. Like, all right, you're putting this in and it's going to point you towards this, IP address. Web 3, I don't know if you could attach it to a CID, but then you would have to implement something like you did with that Web 3.storage, where You get the HTML program that's coring the blockchain for updates, the blog thing you did. I don't know if the piece is there between the like .eth or .bch and resolution at this point.
Yeah. So, and that's, I like how you put that. I'm like cautiously optimistic. Like I hope that they'll come up with some sort of smooth system for this to work. And I'm just kind of waiting to see how that pans out. One thought I had was using the pay to write database. That'd be a perfect application for this kind of name resolver because we have multiple, it's a peer-to-peer database. So there's multiple copies that exist all over the place. So like, you don't need to go to whatever.com. Like you're not restricted to one single .com to access the database to do that sort of name resolution. So what I'm hoping is, give the team that's working on it time to refine it and at least get it into Electron Cache, play with it, see how it works. And then, if it works great, then it works great and that's awesome. But if it doesn't work great, then maybe we can build a bridge between whatever they come up with and the pay to write database and have just basically use the pay to write database as a sort of proxy for whatever system they're building. And sort of incorporate it. And just, at the end of the day, what they have to do if they want mass adoption is they have to produce a library that wallet developers can easily plug into their wallet so that this whole name resolution thing works.
Oh, and the web developers themselves need to have a simple way to build websites on Web3 that's, not a pain in the butt. They need to be able to have a DNS that can't be taken away from them. I'm not totally sold on the .eth because like I had to pay for like 3 years to have the name. So, okay, I don't really have the name then. It's going into a smart contract that assigns my ETH address to that, that .eth address. So that's not necessarily a long-term solution as well, because, they can probably modify the contract. And if somebody wanted to censor me, they could contact the .eth organization and say, write him out of the contract. And they would just, pull up the contract, write the code, I'm blocked now. Or definitely another thing that could be malicious is, say I'm making money and I'm putting out my aaronshoemaker.eth and somebody either somebody gets access to the contract that's not supposed to, or maybe the company itself decides we're going to change the address that resolves to, so that now I got a company where people are sending me ETH, but it's not going to me, it's going to the new address they wrote on the contract. So
yeah, this is the thing is I haven't been impressed with any of these name resolution solutions because the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people just get excited and they start rushing forward, without looking at certain things, and they'll see Vitalik has a .eth and they're like, well, we all need to have a .eth now,
Yeah. So, we'll see how
Elon Musk bought a bunch of Dogecoin, it's all getting a Doge.
Like I said, cautiously optimistic, like I don't want to shit on what they're doing. I think it's great. It's definitely a valuable thing.
No, my point was more like now all of this solution, it's on smart BCH, not on BCH itself. So will they need this smart BCH, all the time? So there will be never like native BCH solution for this, because I've done the same with, if you remember, with NFTs on BCH, right?
Right.
There's no need, but all of this now system is smart contract on smart BCH, but this smart contract is NFT. Because so why to have all this if we can have NFT on BCH and do the same stuff like they're doing now?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is this is, I don't know how many political cans of worms I want to open here, but there's like, so
open them all.
One of the reasons why eCash forked away is because they didn't want to deal with all these noisemakers. And the largest population of noisemakers has now moved to Smart BCH. And so they're and the thing that I think sort of fingerprints this group is that they're constantly chasing hype. They're constantly like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. Yay, everybody do this new popular thing. And so right now that's Smart BCH, and they're just trying to pull in features from ETH that seem like they'd be popular and would increase transaction volume and And so I'm glad they're doing it. It's but it's like, that's why I'm like skeptical, because it's this very hype driven group of people that move from one popular thing to another popular thing, and they just leave a wake of destruction in their path of like half built abandoned projects. And so I'm really glad that group has moved away from SLP tokens on the main chain, because now it's like it's just us. We don't have to fight for attention span, because those, as far as that group's concerned, like SLP is dead and they've moved on. And it's like, great, that's awesome, because this is a protocol and it doesn't change, and there's a lot of value and it still needs a lot of work. So giddy up, so, yeah, I think that's a big part, because Stoyan, your design with the NFT tokens, I think that's a much more elegant design. I mean, that would work for DNS resolution or this name thing. Like, it would just, it from an engineering standpoint, it's better. It's more efficient. So
native for BCH, I'm not sure about so much qualities, but there was no need to have additional blockchain just to resolve names, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, well, you can have somebody just needed to put a little more time to make it better, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, group NFTs. I don't think even somebody else have this like group NFT and children NFTs. This system was great. I think it will be still great if we can. Let's see, the SOP like indexer was problem, like we remember, but now we have the new one, great one. So yeah, we can still make it work pretty well.
I agree, Stoyan. I think that now that the indexer's up, there is and it's running well, that means that myself or whoever else can invest time in producing a front end resolution for the metadata, right? So that you can actually implement a marketplace that works. Whereas before, because the SLP was not working as well, it was really large, there was less incentive to do so. But the cheap and easy way of producing NFTs on BCH, I think I'm still very bullish on. And that next step for me is being able to say, all right, I put this 3D asset up. Here's a BCH or a wallet starter that I've forked and I've added 3JS to, so that when you go to the NFT in your wallet, you actually see a viewer of your 3D object. Like, you don't even have to go to IPFS. You can stay in your wallet and view your object. And then, it's going, all right, how do I integrate this into Blender? How do I integrate this into Unity? So that as people are developing, they can literally just take this module, plug it into Unity, and call up the asset they own into the development environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful vision.
And one question, I read that thread on Twitter that you posted about, I guess there's going to be an upgrade in May for maybe BCHN. There seems to be like some loss of confidence maybe in BCH. Or I'm not sure. I haven't kept up with the upgrade, so
yeah,
I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I know. Yeah, it was just a political football, and I was just calling attention. I wasn't trying to call attention to the article. I was trying to call attention to the fact that it's being used as a political football. What is happening in May is there's two upgrades. There's going to be transaction introspection, which is going to be really cool, because now most of these have to do with cache script and pay to script hash transactions, and general protocols is been the one that's really been pushing this. So there's transaction introspection. So it'll allow transactions to inspect the transaction that they're trying to spend. Like they can read the op return and or read like the addresses that the money's coming from or going to, and then like do logic based on those things like within the script. So that's never existed before, and that's going to open a whole bunch of new possibilities. And then the other change is integer size. I think it's 32-bit integers now, and they're upgrading to 64-bit integers. So Vin Armani, who wrote that article that was in my tweet storm, he maintains Bcache, which is a JavaScript full node implementation, and he decided not to upgrade Bcache for those new features, which means Bcache will get forked off the network. And so he's just gonna conserve his energy and focus on eCache. And I'm at the same place where it's like, I want to support both forks, but if either of them make it too onerous to do that, then I'll be forced to pick one. And so that was just Vin saying, I pick eCache because I don't want to make the effort to put these changes into the full node. I don't think it's worth it. That's what his article was all about. But I mean, it's like, these are just engineering details, but it's getting politicized essentially.
Cool.
All right. Well, we're pushing an hour and 45 minutes, so we should wrap this up, guys. I know my bladder needs a break.
Yep.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys.
Done. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys coming, and yeah, great discussion, and yeah, really appreciate the just being able to share those details on the rate limits with you guys. And it's definitely a problem that will become more of a problem, and so we just need to continue thinking about how, as a community, we want to approach it, because I mean, that's the thing. This is going to be, we're going to have our own token, and I'm excited to do a minting council and have the token be truly governed by multiple people, and build this business model and be a self-sustaining thing. And as part of that, we're going to have to deal with these rate limit issues. That's going to be a big thing in the future.
Sounds good. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Cheers, guys. Thanks for making it.
All right. See you Friday, Storian.